It's called the Super Pit. On the outskirts of the Western Australian town of Kalgoorlie, it's a man-made Grand Canyon, nearly 400 metres deep and getting deeper. This round-the-clock operation is Australia's biggest open-pit gold mine, producing some 20 metric tonnes of the precious metal every year. It's part of a booming resources industry, fueled largely by Chinese demand that accounts for a tenth of the trillion-dollar economy and is credited with keeping Australia out of recession.
But it's the runaway success of operations like this one across Australia that have brought them into the sights of the Australian government. It says the people of this land deserve a bigger slice of the profits that are being dug out from under it.
So the Labour government of Prime Minister Kevin Rudd has announced what it calls a super profits tax on mining. From 2012, 40% of profits deemed to be greater than a reasonable rate of return will go to the Treasurer, raising $8 billion in the first year, funding retirement or superannuation benefits and other government projects.
The Australian people own those resources and they deserve a fairer share from those resources to fund better super, better tax cuts for small business and better infrastructure for the future.
It's brought a declaration of war from the mining companies, which accuse the government of strangling the economy's golden goose by scaring off new exploration and investment.
I want to appeal to my fellow Australians in Sydney and Melbourne and all those who've been listening to the Prime Minister talking about their working families are going to do better. They're not. As this industry moves offshore, as the Australian industry shrinks, it will hurt the blue-collar worker more than the white-collar worker.
The main mine workers' union, however, is telling its members not to be burdened by their boss's rhetoric.
Not a single mine will shut down because of this tax, because the reality is they'll continue to make profits. They'll continue to come to Australia to exploit natural resources because there is nowhere else in the world that has the political stability, the economic infrastructure and the vast amounts of natural resources that we do in this country.
And there's another counter-argument that a break on the mining boom might be no bad thing for the wider economy.
You worry about inflation, core inflation, petrol prices, food prices and so on. So if that gallops away, the only lever really that a government has is to raise interest rates. So if this tax could have an effect in that regard of slowing it down, I think we've got a long growth period for Australia for many, many years ahead. I wouldn't be surprised for the next 20 or 30 years to satisfy the demands of Asia.
Kevin Rudd's first term has been riddled with U-turns on big pledges, most recently the shelving of his beloved carbon emissions trading scheme, and his approval ratings have suffered as a result. Now, in an election year, he's decided to make a new, rich and powerful enemy, betting that the voters will come to see his new tax as a fair reform and not, as the miners argue, a reckless cash grab. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Western Australia.